Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. We are jumping right into this video. Today I am making 4 cozy meals for busy moms. I am a mom of 4. I am a working professional. I am also a track coach, and I remember when my daughters were very young, I had a lot of guilt around being away from them all day. They were at daycare while I was at work all day. What helped me with that guilt was to prepare nutritious home cooked meals for my kids. And so over the years, I've learned how to prepare very nutritious, hearty meals that look like they require a lot more or took a lot more time than they do, and my kids love these meals. And so the first meal I am sharing with you guys today is Shepards Pie. I started with Yukon Gold potatoes. You have to use Yukon Gold, they are the best. I peeled them and cut them up, and now I am browning my ground beef. Typically I use my onions and my garlic. Typically I will saute onions and garlic before I brown the ground beef, but on this night I forgot to do that, so I went ahead and cut up my onions, and I got some garlic, and I put them to saute like in the beef after I had already cooked it. So I just sauteed it a little bit, and then I went ahead and drained it in preparation to put in the rest of my remaining ingredients. So now I am adding some beef broth. You know, and I will leave a recipe that inspired this, but a lot of my cooking is really by kind of seeing and feeling and tasting. I added a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and now I am adding some tomato paste. So I'm going to get that in, stir it all up. And for shepherd's pie, we have a lot of vegetables in the pie, and so I'm adding some frozen corn. I am adding some frozen sweet peas. I use sweet peas, not green peas. My kids don't like green peas, but they love sweet peas. I thought it needed a little bit more liquid, so I added some more beef broth. I added some Himalayan sea salt, and I typically will add a packet of Sazone in my meals just to add a little bit of flavor. And so this is what I did, and then I let this mixture simmer while I was finishing up the potatoes. I took a potato masher and I just mashed them up, really well. And then I added some heavy cream. Again, I just kind of go by sight until it looks creamy enough to me. Always start with a little bit versus a lot, because you can always add more if you need it, but you can't take away. And then I put in some shredded Parmesan cheese. I whisked an egg and I put that in there, and then I went right back into mashing the potatoes. You have to really mash them for a while. And I tasted them to see if they needed more salt. I added a little bit more salt, and I added some garlic to the potatoes. And then I went back in, guys. We were mashing these potatoes. I just wanted them to be creamy and not lumpy. So after the potatoes were mashed, I took the mixture that was on the stove and I poured it into the bottom of the pan. This is going to be my base layer for my shepherd's pie. And then I took those potatoes, I took a ice cream scooper, and I made scoops of potato balls all around that beef mixture. And so once I got it in, I just started to spread it around to smooth it out. I added a little more, a couple more of the balls in places where I thought that it needed it. And then I just went to spread it around to make it smooth. Once it was smooth enough, I took a fork and I used the tines of a fork to just kind of make a little bit of design in it, make some uneven parts so that some parts could like really crisp. You'll see what I'm talking about. Then I melted some butter, and I put the butter all across the top of the potatoes. I put the oven on 400 degrees for 30 minutes, and this was the finished result. As you can see, because I did that fork thing, you have some parts of it that are just raised and browned and crispy. And I put some parsley on the top. This night I didn't have any fresh parsley, so I used dried parsley. And then I put the mixture. I put the shepherd's pie in a bowl, and it's smoking. It was hot. It was so delicious. And then my girls came in. They wanted to sort of have a taste test, and so this is what happened.
That is actually really good. It's good.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So good. A nice fall meal on a nice rainy day.
It's fitting.
Yeah. So thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Double thumbs up. 10 out of 10.
All right, guys. So now we're gonna make Crockpot pot roast. On the same evening that I made the shepherd's pie, I went ahead and prepped my pot roast to go into the crock pot. So I cut up my vegetables. I cut up some onion, I cut up carrots, and then I had more of those Yukon Gold potatoes. I set those aside, and then I seasoned my pot roast. I heavily seasoned the pot roast. One thing about crock pot roast is that it has to be heavily seasoned for the seasoning to stick. So I put salt, pepper, and garlic on here. And then I seared the pot roast on both sides. I added my potatoes, my onions, and my carrots to the crock pot. I also put in some garlic, and I took that seared pot roast and I put it right on top. I made 2 pot roasts because when you have a family as big as mine, you need to make a lot. And then I put in beef broth. I just put in enough to almost cover the 2 roasts. Then I put in a packet of Lipton beefy onion soup mix. I also added a tablespoon of tomato paste, and I added a half a tablespoon of beef bouillon in there. And so guys, this was a few hours later. It was cooking well. It was smelling good. You can see that it's starting to get done. All right, guys, it is several hours later. The pot roast has been in the slow cooker, I don't know, 8-9 hours. I turned it off last night, so it's cooled and it is moist, and the potatoes, everything is seasoned. This is going to be delicious, very easy crock pot meal that looks like a lot more effort than it actually was. Hey y'all, okay, I'm gonna make some roasted chicken tonight, and I'm gonna make the marinade for it. So these are all of my ingredients. I have butter here, I have some seasoning. This is Kinder's. Actually, this one, salt, pepper blend. It's just salt, pepper, and garlic. You can do salt, pepper, and garlic separately if you want. Then I have some sage, I have some rosemary, and then I have some garlic and also some parsley. So I'm gonna mix all of this together, and then I am going to marinate the chicken. I'm going into the office today, so it's just gonna marinate all day, but I'll go ahead and start that process now. So what I'm gonna do is just take the sage, pour it in here. I like a lot of garlic, parsley. Oh, and I forgot to add, this is lemon juice. Okay, so I just opened the chicken. I took out the gizzards and the stuff that's in the inside of the chicken. And so now I'm just gonna pat it dry. And I'm gonna take my spoon right here and just go in hard, just kind of stick the spoon through so I can open it up. Take the spoon and just open it like that. Get the seasoning in there. Go from this side. Then we're gonna hold the chicken like this. Take our marinade. Then we're gonna, go in just like that. We're gonna put the marinade right inside of the chicken. I'm going to take some of the marinade and put it on the outside of the chicken as well. Right on the outside. I'm going to take the lemons that we used here, put it right on the inside. Okay guys, so when I came home from work that evening, I took the chicken out of the refrigerator and I kind of just let it sit out for at least an hour or so to bring it to room temperature. And then I went ahead and tied some cooking string around the legs of the chicken. I am also going to tuck the wings of the chicken. And then I cut up some onion and I used some garlic cloves. And what I did was to just to create a layer on the bottom of the pan. I didn't want my chicken to be directly on the bottom of the pan, so I used the onion and garlic as a bottom layer to sit the chicken on top of. It also adds some flavoring to it, but it helps the chicken to, not stick to the bottom of the pan. I did put some olive oil all over the chicken and I went ahead and rubbed the marinade and the olive oil in. I wanted the skin to be brown and crisp. I didn't show this, but I also poured some chicken broth in the bottom of the pan just to help create some juice. And so I put this in the oven and I went ahead to make my sauteed green beans. So I just put some Worcestershire sauce, I put some salt, pepper, and garlic, and then I added some cornstarch because I wanted this to have a little bit of a coating to it, just to give it a little bit of, extra crispiness. And I used that Kinder seasoning for everything. It's an all-purpose seasoning. It's just salt, pepper, and garlic, and it's great. So I used this, and I kind of heavily seasoned it because you have to do that. If not, the green beans won't, taste as flavorful. And so I went ahead and added some crushed red pepper, salt, pepper, garlic. And then here I'm just adding a little more cornstarch because I wanted all of the green beans to be coated. And then I put these green beans right into the air fryer. I put a little bit more salt before I closed the air fryer and I set them to cook. At this point, I was just basting the chicken. This is that chicken broth and some of the juices that the chicken has made. About halfway through, I went ahead and basted the chicken, and then this was the finished result. I did taste a little bit off the end, and it was perfect. It was crispy, it was flavorful and seasoned through. It was really delicious and so moist. And then these are my green beans. I like to char the green beans. They were crispy, crunchy, flavorful, and this was a delicious meal. All right, guys, so now let's make some lasagna soup. I had wanted to make this recipe for a really long time. And so I am sauteing my ground beef here. I am adding that Kinder seasoning again, salt, pepper, and garlic. I also added a little bit of salt. Once the ground beef was almost done, I went ahead and added that. Then I added my onion. I added some garlic and went ahead and sauteed that into the meat. I added some crushed red pepper and then I added some Prego pasta sauce. And then here I'm adding some chicken broth. Again, I will attach the recipe, but I really sort of just go by how it feels to me. This needed to be really soupy because I needed a soupy, watery mixture to boil the lasagna noodles. I put in here some crushed tomatoes and I also added some sugar for taste. With most of my pasta dishes, I add a bay leaf, and so I did that here. And here I took some lasagna noodles and I broke them up into 3 or 4 pieces. So I broke each of the long noodles into 3 or 4 pieces, and I just started adding noodles until I felt that it was enough. I have a pretty large family, so I knew that I needed a lot of noodles, and so I put more noodles in, and then I added more chicken broth because I felt like it was really too thick. So I added more chicken broth, and then I was able to add even more noodles in here. I went ahead and seasoned it, added a little bit more salt to season it, and a packet of Sazon. So I was tasting this along the way to know how much seasoning that I needed. And so when it got to the right consistency, for me, I added some oregano and I added some allspice. I usually use a pinch of allspice in all of my tomato-based dishes. So this is what I did. And here I am adding more of the crushed tomatoes. The recipe called for that. And I'm just stirring it up, stirring everything up. The pot was like almost overflowing at this point. I added more noodles because I could add more, and I thought I could use more, so I added a little bit more noodles. And then guys, I am going to season this a little bit more, and I'm going to let this simmer. So I'm adding some salt, adding a little bit more sugar, stirring it all up. It's about to flow over at this point. And then I let it come to a boil. You can see that it's boiling here. When it did that, I turned the pot down and I put the lid on. At this point, I went to pick up my daughter from school, and then when I got back, this is what we were looking like. You can see that the noodles have softened, the mixture, the soup is becoming thicker, and I was very happy with what I was seeing here. And so I went ahead and tasted it just to make sure my noodles were soft enough, and they were. So at this point, I added heavy cream. This is optional, but I highly recommend it because it took the flavor to another level. And so I added enough cream until I was sort of satisfied with the way it looked. Then I let this marinate, and once I took the top off of the pot after it had marinated, all of the cream had kind of dissipated. It was just like a lighter color. And so I went ahead and I fixed my cup for the first taste test, and it was amazing. I added some Parmesan cheese and some fresh parsley, and this was an amazing meal. My kids loved it. We devoured this. This had become an instant hit for us. Okay guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video and that you are inspired to make some of these meals. I also hope you have a happy, safe, and healthy week, and whatever you do, make it cozy. Bye guys.